a great joy to just really lay back and speak about what is dearest to the heart. And it is certainly dear to my heart to speak about our live programs, where everything happens, where the resonance and the experiences, where all the everything that can and cannot be described always stays here, always with me. I carry it always here. So before we turn to some of the pre-submitted and advanced questions, I just want to say a few words as an opening, maybe just as an informal kind of placing it into a context of sorts. Okay? So, most of you, if not all of you, know that we call our live events, our retreats, immersions. And many of you have heard us speaking about it, and many of you have heard me speaking about it, why that is. And when we coined out that term is one of the translations of Sanskrit word samavesha. And going back to some 12 years, I would say, yes, about 2012, 2013, when we were deciding how we're going to refer to our live programs as we began offering them to the public in California back in the days, we thought, what kind of language to use? And I guarantee you, nobody back in the days used that term. You would not find the term immersion used with reference to live retreats. There were primarily two terms: silent retreats and intensives. Okay? Silent retreats and intensives. So all the teachers out there, all the teachers that are very well known to spiritual folk who is remotely interested in anything with regard to this, have come across these terms. So we've decided consciously, Amrita Ma, my partner, we sat down, we were thinking what term to use. And it just became very apparent that we need to introduce a unique term for our programs. Unique that would correspond to the very nature of the work. So the term immersion was brought out into the open. And if you go today, just out of curiosity, I welcome you to try for yourself. And you type, spiritual immersions, and you will see there are plenty of choices out there. So I'm glad that we were the trendsetters. I'm saying that without any hint of pride or kind of sense of superiority, but I am a little bit chuffed that we've introduced that term, and that term remained concealed for what it is for quite some times. Until about 5 years ago, we've decided to unveil why we call our immersions. Outside of the obvious linguistic connotations of that term, which means being submerged, immersing oneself into something rather than utilizing some other terms. It had this very strong Shaiva Tantric connotation to samavesha. And some of you may have already heard that we began unpacking this theme in depth since last year in view of perhaps dedicating an entire work as a book to that theme, to the theme of samavesha. And we have singled out 3 aspects, because the term itself has many, many different connotations. If you look it up in Sanskrit dictionary, you will see how many connotations and variables are given in translating that term into English or any other languages. But we are focusing on 3 primary aspects of what Samavesha stands for. And they are immersion, penetration, and possession or repossession. So this is how we work with these terms and with this term, by giving each of these aspects a specific angle of inquiry. And today we will speak about Samavesha as immersion because it is referred to our live programs, live events. So let me just add one more thing in terms of placing this into the context of today's gathering and into the context of why to have this gathering of the kind in the first place, right? Why to dedicate time like this to speak to our programs? Isn't that fairly straightforward? There is someone who showed up, right? Someone who decided that he or she is up to the job and holding the space, right? Entering that role, and someone else there feels in sync, in resonance with that, and the rest is settled there and then. And yet we felt it would be a very useful exercise to simply allow these exchanges where we can speak about what happens in our programs, why they are unique, why it is impossible to convey what happens in our live programs, and why we not just strongly recommend, why we consider our programs to be absolutely indispensable. In other words, one can settle on studying in our day and age remotely by being exposed to written, recorded, shared format, in whatever ways. After all, we are quite prolific in our output. We have quite a good, strong team now, and we always had, but right now we're kind of coming into our ripe phase as an organization. We have videos that go out every week, 2, at times 3 videos per week. There are plenty of other sources available out there, and yet none of this comes even remotely close to what is available in our programs when one attends them. And all of you who are here, and there are many familiar faces, many very, very dear to us faces here gathered, will testify to that. So it's not like I'm trying to kind of, a smooth operator, or like, what is it? Snake oil salesman, doing his job, like recruiting people into the retreat, giving it another spin, another name in the marketplace of spirituality, as long as you all guys end up registering and, none of that. None of that. I guarantee you. In fact, the disparity between how we are able to put our word out with regard to our live programs and the value of what these live programs bring never meet. They don't even come close. So this is for those of you who have never yet experienced live programs, have never immersed themselves. So before we open up to the questions, I would like to make it very clear that to me it remains a mystery. There is some kind of magic, some kind of force at work that conspires behind the scenes as it begins to create the container of each of our immersions. As our immersions get completed over a period of time and they take shape in exactly that way, how it then presents itself when we finally gather there on the first evening. Our immersions always start with that first evening when we sit together there, and that whole process of immersing ourselves begins. It never baffles me, never ceases to baffle me, I mean. It never ceases to surprise me. How at times, well before the immersion begins, days before, some energetic frequencies begin to be experienced by many participants who are already eager to get together in that shared space, what would become a shared space. So you see, there is a lot more, I would say, yes, frankly, mystery to that we can dissect with our rational minds and in attempts to satisfy the mind's curiosity as how is it works, what's the operating power behind it, and so forth. So this is what I wanted to mention before we go anywhere, so as to make it very clear why we call these programs immersions, and also inexplicable nature of what takes place in these programs.